Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Better Satellite World, a podcast of space and satellite professionals international. I'm Tamara Bond Williams, Membership Director of SSPI. Lou is off today having his summer fun. We have a very special surprise edition of Summer Fun today, the last in our series. I'll tell you more about it in a second. But first, these podcasts are supported by the corporate partner members of SSPI, Hughes EchoStar, Northrop Grumman, Access Intelligence, and the law firm of K&L Gates. SSPI podcasts are also supported by the 3,000 members of Space and Satellite Professionals International and our global network of chapters around the world. Thank you. Unlike most trade associations, SSPI has groupies. Yes, groupies. The origin story of SSPI allegedly begins in a bar with a band of satellite enthusiasts who called themselves satellite groupies. I've had the privilege of getting the real scoop from some of the folks who made up the original satellite groupies and to learn from them what the pioneering days of the satellite industry were like and what lessons they can share with us today. I invite you to join me for this two-part conversation with SSPI's official groupies. I'm going to start with Ms. Lynn Fischer, who is currently living in Kentucky, where she's the founder and CEO of Catalyst Learning. She is still applying lessons learned of how to apply technology to expand access to education. As well, we have Polly Hollis. She's currently retired in North Carolina. She is ever the organizer. We'll hear more about that. She's currently a member of 3 book clubs, 2 bridge clubs, a gourmet cooking group, a gardening group. She chairs a wine appreciation group, and she started a new dinner and wine group called the Wino. I'm going to find out how to pronounce that. So no wonder that she was part of this original group. Susan Irwin, still residing in Washington, D.C., currently in Georgetown, where at least one of the groupies meetings was convened. She's semi-retired. She's hoping to eventually be a little bit more than semi-retired. She's the managing director of Euroconsult and volunteering currently with Geeks Without Frontiers. Bucky Marshall splits his retirement time between Arizona and Colorado. He currently keeps himself busy playing music and working at a food bank. Bill Page is living in Virginia. He's still active in the industry. He's currently the VP of Sales North America with Novelsat. Joe Pelton, former chair of SSPI. I bet there's a few of those here. Currently living in Virginia. He's still active in the industry as a consultant and author. He is on his 54th and 55th book. 54th book coming out in September, Space and Sustainability, 55th coming out by the end of the year. Holy Christmas. He's currently chair of board of Alliance for Collaboration and Exploration of Space, or ACES, Executive Board, International Association for the Advancement of Space Safety, editor of Journal Space Safety Engineering, editorial board of Space Policy, and advisor to THEA Communications. Mr. Mack Schwing. Yep. Okay. Mr. Mack Schwing is retired, and again, he is splitting his time between Arizona and California. He's still active in the wine industry, part owner of a company that teaches wine industry professionals how to sell wine. Mr. Del Smith is living in Maryland. He is hyper active in industry. He is currently serving as general counsel for a lunar development company, which is now in stealth mode. Ms. Kim Degnan, who is one of the first people in the industry to welcome me to SSPI. I want to say hello and welcome to all of you. This is a very, very good representation, as far as I understand it, of the original satellite groupies. So this is going to be a conversation which I hope to really step back and let you all talk. So I'm going to just throw a real quick question out there. And then after that, we're going to have an opportunity to invite some of the extended family of groupies into the conversation as well. But I want to start with this word, right? Groupies. Typically, we understand groupies as rock bands. So I'm really curious as to how we came up with this word as describing folks in industry. Why was it the satellite groupies? Go.
I don't remember.
Well, Lynn, I remember you saying that you were distinctly against the name groupies because groupies had such negative connotations, especially for nice young ladies. So I don't remember exactly how it stuck, but we came up with that long list of other possible names, most of which we can't mention here today. So we stuck. I think that's why we struck, is because our creative minds came up with so many other wild possibilities.
Well, I think, well, I don't remember exactly why we came up with the name groupies either, but the most important thing about the groupies was that the only rule we had was no rules.
Yes.
No rules, no structure. We were just out to get together and have fun and relax. And there was probably much too much drinking going on. But at the end of a day of working at a conference, at an event, at a meeting, we just would end up at whatever bar we were at. And it was a group of us that, just wanted to get together and hang out and have fun. There was no professional society for the satellite industry. We were a bunch of kind of risk takers, and I think groupies was a perfect name for us.
And we didn't have to sing our company or our law firm or our accounting firm's praises. We were talking by ourselves. Groupies was really a state of mind, and it could have been called anything. What happened after the beginning of it, though, it was mischaracterized quite quickly. Oh my gosh, they're only interested in eating and drinking and partying. That's not only not true, but you miss the idea. Groupies was a state of mind. Groupies was the very beginning of something where one night you'd talk about distance learning, then you'd talk about large space structures in geosynchronous orbit. But then you also did something else. You talked about users. What difference do all these things make? Well, they make a lot of difference. You look at the Washington Post today, telework is taking over. My God, we did telework in the 70s. Mm-hmm. We did telemedicine in the 70s. We did distance learning, and it was all from the groupies sitting around and having one too many brandy Manhattans with 2 olives and a touch of bitters.
Well, there were so many different trade shows. We would be at a broadcasting, the NAB one week, the NCTA the next week, distance learning the next week.
Don't forget PSSC.
And we just would run into the same people and say, hey, wait a minute, didn't I see you last week? And what's your company's angle? And how do you fit into this? And trying to figure out who the users were and how to best serve them. And luckily, several of us I see here were with the magazine. So we were in the middle of the thing and everyone wanted us to know what was going on so we could publicize it. But just all those various markets, from putting satellites into space to DBS, possibility of DBS terminals at home.
What happened at a groupies meeting stayed with the groupies. We never took notes. And we never let anybody down in confidence.
Oh, no, that's not true. We did take notes. The chairman of the board.
We did.
The chairman of the board, BORED, was the person who was charged with taking notes and then sending them out to everybody in the group, as you all saw from Mike Caffarel's groupiegrams that
I have about 20 of them
yesterday, and they were hilarious.
They were hilarious.
I just want to say, I want to
catch that. B-O-R-E-D, the chairman of the board. Thank you. Okay, keep going.
And the other important thing about the chairman of the board was that the chairman was elected at each meeting, and it was whoever didn't show up was automatically made chairman of the board for the next meeting.
While we're recalling the history, though, when we, a group of us went off to a Mexican restaurant in Denver to talk about starting a professional group that had structure and had professional objectives, there was not a unanimous feeling that this was a good idea. I remember Bill Page thought this was a crazy idea to break up the groupies. And Bill, why don't you tell us what you thought about our original ideas of creating the SSPI?
Well, I thought that, you know, we were having a great time doing what we were doing. And when all the talk started about formalizing everything, I remember there was a meeting at the Washington Hilton.
That's where it was, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And Mike Caffarel and I walked in. It was September because the World Series was on. Mike Caffarel and I walked in, and there was a lawyer in the room. So we looked at each other and said, well, okay, the groupies are gone. We need to go to the bar. I went to the bar, but obviously we were proved wrong because it just grew into an amazing organization with many.
What I remember was that it almost started a war. The anti SSP versus, well, I guess we didn't have a name yet, but the people that were opposed to starting a formal organization, you and others were just absolutely, you know, absolutely militaristic about being our fun groupies.
We got very lucky because soon after that we started holding the proms, what we call the proms. And those of us that continued to be rowdy would just rent, you know, 4 tables in the back of the room where you guys made us sit, and we just enjoyed ourselves, you know, back there.
I remember a couple of SSPI galas, which is what we called them then, except that Peter Marshall kept calling it a gala, but never mind that. The first one was very nice and all that, but then later on, you did get very obstreperous in the back of the room. And when we had 400, 500 people start showing up after the 3rd, 4th, 5th one, and you guys would laugh in the back and talk and do all that kind of stuff. It's hard to keep the microphone.
I don't think anybody in those days was anti-SSPI, Joe. I think what it was, we all have been involved in startups at some point in our life. And we were the people in the startup. And then it came time for the Series A funding round. And all of a sudden, the lawyer came in the room. The bureaucrats came in the room. We had to have structure. We have to have committees. My God, we're going to be international. Won't it be fun? It's fun, but it's different. And the founders, how many times do you hear about founders being kicked off of their own boards? Happens every day. And it happens just because that's how time passes.
We need to put the record straight that as we began, there were a lot of people who were unfortunately not still with us, like Ben Fischer, who was chairman of the board when I was the first president, and Bill Pritchard was basically asked to chair an international group along with Tadahiro.
You owe it, Jim.
Yes. Anyway, we set up a Japanese chapter at the very beginning, and we always aspired to be international from the start. But we didn't do necessarily the best job of it. And later on, Peter Marshall will tell us about you know, what he did to try to internationalize things further. But it needs to be clear that we saw this as a global industry and a global organization from the outset.
That was the last touch on our name, was to add the I. I
Yes.
remember that.
It was later.
Yeah.
Right. We were
Arlene, you were trying to
society-
say, I'm going to jump in. Arlene, I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I think we're jumping ahead because by 1982, and Bill Pritchard was also part of the original groupie. He was the director of ComSat Labs, if you remember. In 1982, I organized this big conference at NYU, and most of you were there. It was the beginning of the DBS industry. Western Union announced the opening of the teleport on Staten Island. I had Marconi's daughter, Braga Marconi, as a keynote speaker. You all went off to Chinatown for a dinner, and you came back and said, we're forming an organization. And that was 1982. Yeah. So we didn't, and then Joe became the president, and the organization didn't really start until about 2003, because 1983, right after that. So my conference was in February 1983. And you all started SSPI. I went off to Australia, and I have the gala from 2003 celebrating 20 years of SSPI. Yeah. So we weren't international at that point. We were very local. And I also remember that I met Polly and Joe in 1978, 79, when they were at PSSB, or Joe was at Intelsat, I think. Yeah. And I was researching my graduate studies, my doctorate, in the impact of satellite communications on culture. It was the beginning of the industry, and the first distance learning didn't happen until about 1981, 82, 83, where it was educational programming distributed by satellite. It wasn't the beginning of distance learning, it was the beginning of satellite-based distance learning.
Thank you.
So I think, and
I'm gonna jump right in just a moment, Arlene. I'm just gonna jump right in because I did not ever introduce you because I had not yet brought in the extended family of the groupies. So I'm going to take a moment to do that now and bring in everyone else. So Arlene is in California, serving on boards of directors, grant writing, consulting for organizations involved in providing computer and broadband to low-income individuals. And as you just heard, that was always a passion for her. Consulting and helping organizations and those experiencing food insecurity and homelessness and working in the arts. Arlene was very graciously showing us one of our programs from the gala. So with that, I'm going to introduce Miss Penelope Longbottom, who is currently living in Virginia and is, as she puts it, actively retired, keeping busy with travel, fitness, and mentoring young professionals. I'm going to invite into the space Mary Frost Distler, who is living in New Jersey. She volunteers at Duke Farms and previously taught officers at Fort Meade Defense Information School. And also mentioned earlier, I'm going to welcome in Mr. Peter Marshall, all the way from England, who continues to work with fellow groupie Joe Pelton on space-related books and is also a published author of 2 spy novels. Tells us a little bit of something about Peter. And so, welcome everybody. I'm very happy to have everyone here. And so I just want to give a little bit of background. Joe was kind enough to explain, as I was trying to assemble everyone, that the groupies actually eventually became a group as large as 60 people. But people came into this little family as we went along. So I'm happy to have some of that extended family here today. And I just want to, we've got some of the feedback is already happening about what made the groupies, but I want to ask this question. When I'm piggybacking on some of what Arlene was just sharing. When the groupies started, obviously the industry was brand new, right? Satellites are not new. Satellites had started in the 50s, but communication satellite as an industry was new. And so what was different about that time? And, how did you guys understand this to be an industry, or what? Just tell me a little bit about that time.
Well, let me just jump in. I was kind of a dabbler in the industry, but I was working as a consultant at Satellite Business Systems for about 4 years. And one of the issues that I saw there is they couldn't figure out who was going to use all this bandwidth. They were trying really hard to sell to banks and other people that had to do backups, and they were doing all this. And that was so far ahead of where the industry was at that point in time that they went bankrupt.
Mac, do you recall that we were going to start a business to do phased array ground antennas?
Yes, I remember that. Yeah, we talked to Bill Pritchard about what we could do with that.
25 years ahead of our time.
Yes.
I think to me, one of the reasons that we all got together was it was all so new. None of us had parents who were in the industry and said, come on, Johnny, follow me in this industry. We were all new, and we were all interested in what could be done in space, what could be done with satellites. And it was exciting. We partied or drank or rode mechanical bulls in one case, but we always kind of behaved ourselves. As far as I know, nobody ever got in any trouble. Nobody ever was a bad person. We all had fun, but we worked very hard, and we were just pioneers without maybe being sure that we were pioneers.
Yeah, I want to add to what Polly just said. We were from so many different disciplines, different educational backgrounds, different geographic backgrounds, but we shared the spirit of being in a new and exciting industry.
Yeah.
Can I come in and go back to those earlier days a moment, Tamara? Because I just want to say that it's so good to see all you guys, and I met you all over the early years. I remember it so well, thanks mainly to a meeting I had with Dell in Europe back in, I think, '79. And he told me what was going on with his magazine, and then the start of SCUC. And I think I came to SCUC in the second meeting you had in Denver.
You did, 1980, yes.
Yeah, and I was on the way there in Washington. I met Joe. Dell introduced me to Joe at a ComSat meeting, and everything else flowed from that, really. And I got to know all you guys in the course of the next year or two, and learned so much that I needed to know about this fairly new industry to all of us. And they were exciting days back in the early 80s. And I was so pleased to get caught up with all of you guys over the next year or two in various ways, not least with the start of the SSP. And that was an introduction I had through Joe and Dell. And my real association came when I had an unexpected phone call in London from Bill Pritchard, who said, I would like you to join our board as the first international vice president, I think it was, of the SSP. And that was what got me really involved with all of you in all the subsequent events and meetings. And it was a great start to the whole range of activities that everyone here was involved with. And I just learned so much from all of you, which was valuable to me. And I was able to spread it around a bit as well, I guess, with the chums I had back in Europe. But all of you, can I just say, were so important to me at various stages in those early years. And I owe it all to Joe and Dell for getting me involved with you all, and it was great.
Peter, you started a group in London, did you not?
That's another story. I tried. As a result of Bill Pritchard's call, I'd set up a group in London who I thought were going to become a chapter of the SSP, as it was then. And they were a pretty rebellious crowd of people, all in the same early stages of getting into the industry as you all were, we all were. But they saw no point whatever in belonging to what they saw as an American organization and sending their subscription money to somebody they didn't know in Washington, and what were they going to get back for it? As a result of that, they instead formed the Space Society in London, which was a quite separate organization. And it took a long while before it could become properly affiliated with the SSP. And it was, I think, after I'd moved to Washington, when we eventually added the I to the name, and I was supposed to be the international link man for the SSPI, I think, for a while. And then, of course, got involved in all the other activities. When I was living there with, Polly and the galas and all the rest of it, it was all great fun.
You said gala, and you used to tell us that it was properly pronounced gala. And I just heard you say gala.
I'd like to go back to the idea of us all being pioneers and how amongst all of this fun we were having, there was a seriousness and a pioneering spirit. I first met Polly when she was working with PSSC and the Communications Technology Satellite. And I met Joe and was interviewing him when he was at Intelsat. And in 1985, I organized, because of you all, the first international student-to-student satellite event between students in New York and students in Australia called Our Future in Space. And Intelsat, because of our connections in the group, donated the transponder time, which was unheard of in those days. So we were pioneers, and we supported each other in our work as well as in our play.
I have a quick question for everyone here. I think I met almost everyone here who was into video conferencing. I started in 1979 at WNET, Channel 13, and we had Net Telecom, and the PBS stations were the first ones to use satellites by a few years, which is why I got to ABC. But how many of you worked for video conferencing companies?
I did.
Saying, yes, I know. And yes, and Lynn, Kim, yes.
Well, I was directly involved in video conferencing through my work at NTIA and initially through my work at ACSN, at the Appalachian Regional Commission. So early distance learning and video conferencing.
So I don't know if you all remember this, but yeah.
PSSC and Appalachian, that Appalachian group were the first to do that, as far as I know, outside of the military.
And that's where I met you, Polly, when you were at PSSC and I was at the Appalachian Regional Commission.
Exactly. You came to California. I remember you sitting in one of the offices in San Diego where we were.
And I met both of you because I was at
experimental days.
I was at NTIA and I administered the first satellite grant program that funded video conferencing and telelearning and telemedicine. I met you, Polly. I'm not sure you were there yet at PSSC, probably. And I met Susan Irwin there. And I just want to say that when you're watching TLC, it's changed a lot, but the origins of that particular cable network, satellite-based cable network, came from the Appalachian Regional Network.
The Learning Channel came out of the Appalachian Regional Commission.
Right.
It's all very interesting.
And we're on a Zoom conference call right now, but what we did back in the late 70s with video conferencing is kind of come to fruition with this very easy to do Zoom conference.
Yeah.
And you want to mention someone, I think Bucky, was it you that mentioned telemedicine earlier?
Yeah,
all
we did that too.
And when the pandemic started, and my significant other, who was a senior executive at MedStar, had to incorporate telemedicine into their practices and the whole MedStar system. It was brand new to them, and it was a major effort. And it was, for me, it was where I started.
We were doing that 30 or 40 years ago.
Even in the early days, the government was watching In those days, I was involved with NASA through the Office of Applications, and an associate administrator there was very interested in what we were doing. So Appalachia, the Rocky Mountain experiment, the Indian site experiment, those all had a little bit and a little flavor of NASA involved with them. And that turned out to be something very interesting, because while we cared a lot about users and applications, all of a sudden, Washington stepped in, no Office of Applications, technology transfers started to be forgotten, and people were just interested in, excuse the expression, making money.
Yeah.
And so the industry matured, and I think the early days of the Groupies was still a wonderful day of, if I can use the phrase, flower children and their friends.
That concludes part 1 of our conversation with the Satellite Groupies. Tune in for part 2 with the Groupies' thoughts on the current state of the industry, gender neutrality, and more. Many thanks to our corporate partners, Hughes EchoStar, Northrop Grumman, Access Intelligence, and K&L Gates for their financial support for this series. If you'd like to become a member of SSPI, you can visit sspi.org. Memberships are $100 US per year, and if you're a student, your membership is free. You can learn more about supporting 2 exciting new upcoming series of the Better Satellite World on satellites and climate change, and the new public-private partnership by contacting me at tbond-williams@sspi.org. Follow us on Twitter at SSPI, and check us out on LinkedIn and Facebook. Don't forget to send in your nominations for the Better Satellite World Awards. The deadline for the nominations is September 30th, and we're hoping to celebrate your nominee at the awards dinner coming up in December. For Space and Satellite Professionals International, Lou Zaccarilla, our producer, Anna Gomez, and myself, Tamara Bond-Williams, let's remember to make it a better satellite world. Thank you.